Okay, we're going to learn a fascinating explanation of Chassidus on a very peculiar medrash. You really see through this idea how Chassidus gives such depth and profound meaning to things that sound like they can't have meaning. Just amazing. The medrash gives a parable to explain the meaning of the flood. The parable goes like this. There was a king, and the king had a palace, and he had in his palace people who were deaf and mute, and they couldn't praise the king in a regular way. They just would move their fingers and go king, And so the king thought, if this is what deaf people can do, can you imagine what regular people could do? So he brought regular people into the palace, and the regular people come in the palace and they say, this is our palace. What are you doing here? So instead of the regular people praising the king, they said, this is our palace. So what did the king do? The king said, okay, let's bring this back. Let's bring this back the way it was before, and let's bring back the deaf people again. So the Medrash says that in a similar way, when God created the world, the world was covered with water, and then God gathered the waters and revealed dry land. They put people on the dry land, and they acted not so nicely. So therefore, Hashem said, let's bring the world back to water. That's what the Medrash says. Now, the obvious thing that this Medrash seems to contradict, a fundamental thing, is that the purpose of the flood on the surface was to destroy the world. Instead, the Medrash says that the purpose of the flood was to express the praise of Hashem. It's about God's praise. The water was there before, God made the world, and the water praised Hashem. What does that mean? And now Hashem wanted to do something else, and he gathered the water and it didn't work. So he brought it back to the way it was before. And the simple meaning of the flood was to destroy the world. So there is a teaching of the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or this week. Just a pitch, Mr. Hashem, on Monday and Thursday, God willing. Newman's back. Mr. Hashem is going to teach Torah Or. Mr. Hashem. Anyway, so in Torah Or this week, it says that the flood was like a mikveh. It was for 40 days, it was for 40 nights. And just like a mikveh is only kosher if it has 40 measurements of water, so too the purpose of the flood wasn't only to destroy the world, it was also to purify the world. That's why Chassidus says that there were no rainbows before the flood, because the world wasn't, the clouds were too dense for the light to reflect or refract through the clouds. And only after the flood, where the world was purified, did now the clouds lose that grabka, that density, and they're able to reflect the light of the sun and create a rainbow. So the Alter Rebbe's teaching does tell us that the purpose of the flood wasn't just to destroy, it was also to purify. But the Medrash says something different. The Medrash says that the water itself praises Hashem. The water praises Hashem. The water was there before and the water was after. What does that mean? So to understand this, we have to first talk a little bit about the difference between creatures of the ocean and creatures of dry land. Creatures of dry land, we learned in Parshas, they're created from the dry land. Hashem, just like Hashem made Adam, he took the earth to make Adam, so too all creatures of dry land, they come from the dry land. Creatures of the ocean, they are created from the ocean. Hashem, from the water itself, Hashem created various creatures of the ocean. That's why the halacha is, the Gemara says you're allowed to, when you go to the mikveh, if you use the ocean, the mikveh, let's say somehow you would dip into the eye of a fish, would it be kosher? The halacha is it's kosher. Why? Because it's part of the ocean. Very good. Since it comes from the ocean, it's considered like the ocean. So the meaning of creatures of the dry land, they may come from the dry land. They're not inside. They don't stay there. Creatures of the ocean, they stay in their source. They stay attached to their source. So in a similar way, just like there are creatures that are attached to their source, so too there is a similar idea when we talk about Hashem creating the world. There are worlds where there's a sense of Hashem is all there is. That's what everyone in the world feels, that Hashem made. All there is Hashem, nothing else. They're submerged in their source. Not just they come from Hashem, everything comes from Hashem, but they're like creatures of the ocean, they're submerged in their source. Our prayers are compared to a ladder. So in the ladder, there's 4 steps. First part of the ladder is Meida'ani, you acknowledge Hashem. Then you speak about Baruch Shamar, the second stage where you speak of the greatness of Hashem in the world, and the old and the young and all kinds of people and all kinds of creatures praise Hashem. Then you go to the third step, the blessings of Shema and Shema, where you think about the truth of Hashem and the oneness of Hashem. And then you come to Shemona Esrei. Shemona Esrei, you don't speak anymore out loud. You say Hashem opened my lips. Why do you say Hashem opened my lips? Because you're next to the king. Next to the king, you lose your sense of self. There's no more being outside and talking about the king. You're in front of the king. Why are you talking? So that those 4 steps of davening correspond to the 4 worlds. Atzilus, B'ri, Yetziasiyah. It's a ladder. We start off on this world, and through the davening, we ascend to the highest world, to the world of Atzilus. And when we get to the world of Atzilus, so that's where we cannot speak anymore. That's similar to what the Medrash says, that the world was covered with water. The world was covered with water, meaning that there's no sense of self anymore. So that causes praise to Hashem. When a person loses himself to Hashem's reality, and he just feels the presence of Hashem, like in the world of Atzilus, that is an expression of the praise of Hashem. All there is the king. It's great. So Hashem said, well, if creatures which have no sense at all of themselves, they praise Hashem, wouldn't it be a greater praise of Hashem if there were people who could speak, people who weren't mute? In other words, let's take away some of the light of Atzilus, and let's bring the world to a state where let's create a world, let's create a reality where there isn't such a vivid perception, a clarity of the truth of Hashem. And let's see how people praise Hashem on their own, with their own understanding. There's an advantage in that. What's the advantage? When you're in the world of Atzilus, so your praise of Hashem is a lot greater. It's a much greater praise of Hashem, but it's all because of Hashem. It's because of Hashem's light is shining on you. Versus when you're in this world and you're trying to praise Hashem on your own, it's coming from you, from your understanding. So there's an advantage in both, but there's also a disadvantage. The disadvantage is, as the Medrash says, that when the king put the regular people in the palace, what did they say? They said, it's our palace. So something is lost by the king hiding his light, and the king creating a reality where you don't feel the presence of the king as much. What's lost is that there's a chance for people to use their minds in the wrong way. In our lives, the water-like reality and the dry land-like reality are similar to our faith in Hashem and our understanding of the greatness of Hashem. Our faith in Hashem, our simple belief in Hashem, that's like the water. That's like there's no sense. It's what Hashem gave me. Hashem gave me as a Jew. I have belief in Hashem. It's because of the light of Hashem in my neshama. Therefore I know. That's the emunah. That's the water kind of reality. Then there is the other reality of my mind, my understanding. So Hashem says, I want there to be the people who understand Hashem's truth on their own, not just because of my light. But what about the danger? So what Hashem did was, He covered the world with water again. What that means is Hashem purified the world in a way so there wouldn't be that risk and that danger anymore of people forgetting about Hashem completely. Although Hashem is telling us to use our mind, because the flood purified the world, so now it's possible for us to use our mind and use our heart to appreciate Hashem's greatness. Before the flood, people used their mind and they went the wrong direction because the world wasn't purified enough. It was sort of like there could be a world which is non-kosher, and there could be a world which is parif. Before the flood, the world was more in the realm of, let's say, the intellect. The intellect logically tells us that Hashem made the world. That's what the intellect tells us. That's logical. Hashem made the world. Logic dictates that there's a source. But although logic dictates that there's a source, logic could also be say the opposite. Before the flood, the world wasn't purified, and it was more earthy. It was more coarse, and therefore people gravitated to say things which are ridiculous. That we're here. This is our palace. What the flood accomplished was that the world became more pure, and now it's easier for a human being to recognize Hashem with his mind. So Hashem wants it to be four parts of davening. Hashem wants us to have that atzilus part, the part which is covered with water. Hashem also wants us to daven with our own mind. He wants that part of the dry land. The goal of flood is that even when we're in that realm of sense of self, we should also have that connection to our faith in Hashem. The Rebbe Rashab said that even those people who are intelligent nowadays, they have to put their minds aside and go after simple faith in Hashem, and not to veer the tiniest bit, the size of the point of a yud away from the Shulchan Aruch, away from the code of Jewish law. It's not a time when intellect is the most important thing in our lives. Our mind isn't the most important, but at the same time, we also have other parts of davening. We're also meant to try to understand the greatness of Hashem as well. It's not only about we're not meant to only believe. Hashem also wants us to use our minds as well. It's not, we can't base our lives on our intellect, but Hashem wants us to also learn about the greatness of Hashem as well, to learn Tanya, to learn Chassidus. So that's what Mashiach is about. Mashiach, it says when the Mashiach will come, it says the world will be full of the knowledge of Hashem, like water covers the ocean bed. So what does that mean? On the one hand, there'll be earth, the creatures of the earth. There'll be a reality of where there's a sense of self, where there's an identity. It's not the world of Atzilus. It's our own mind, our own understanding, our own feelings. But despite the fact that it's going to be a reality of where there's a sense of self, the water will cover, the world will be full of the knowledge of Hashem, like water covers the earth, like water covers the ocean bed. Just like in the ocean bed, you look at the ocean, what do you see? You only see water. So too, Mashiach will come, although there'll be a sense of self, but it won't be a sense of self in a way where our minds are going off and not getting the truth of Hashem. Like Rabbi Rashab said, it's not a time to use your mind because the world is in a state where there's a lot of darkness. Mashiach comes, the water will cover the earth, the knowledge of Hashem will cover the earth like water covers the ocean bed. It means that our sense of self, our logic, understanding, be permeated with our faith in Hashem. So that's the meaning of the Medrash. Medrash says first Hashem created the world and it was covered with water. Then Hashem gathered the water together and there was a challenge. People said it's our palace. So what did Hashem do? He covered the world again with water. What this means is that first the reality was Hashem made the world, all there is Him. Then Hashem hid that reality and created a reality where we felt as a separate entity from Hashem. That caused problems. So Hashem brought in the world this purity that the flood brought to allow us to exercise our understanding and our appreciation of things with their own mind, and yet for it not to be something that takes us away from the praise of Hashem, but the opposite, that we praise Hashem with our intellect, with our understanding as well, as it will be when Mashiach will come, when the knowledge of Hashem will flood the earth like water covers the ocean.
It's like we don't see. They told you not to see TVs, not to see movies. So this way you have to create
A space of purity.
Yeah. So that's Hashem. Same thing as Hashem did when he flood the earth. So make it
A place of purity.
Yeah. So it can be more easier.
Yeah.
Decide.
Sounds it's a similar idea. Yeah.
You think so?
Akabaruf. Yeah, great day, everybody. Let's road.
Okay, I'm gonna get going.
Because in both ideas is about creating a space which is just pure,